now. All right, great. Okay, welcome everyone. Kind of like before we do anything, I would like to read the room a little bit. So I'm going to launch a poll now, and if you can see it, then please take 10 seconds to fill it out. Can you see it?
Not yet.
What?
Not yet.
This. It says attendees are now viewing questions. This is so strange. Okay, yesterday also.
Maybe there's a lag.
Oh, okay, someone has answered. Who answered?
I got it the day before.
Yeah. Yesterday it didn't work for some reason. Who just for whom did the poll show, and who actually? I answered. Jeanette answered. So the poll just Jeanette. Did the poll just appear in your screen?
Yes, it just came up when I logged in, just straight away.
It came straight away. Okay, and no one else can see it. Okay, very bizarre. Then I would just assume that some of you here. Okay, let's do a read of the room. Can you all put on your video? I think this may actually be more fun. And then let's do the view by which we have, by which you can all see everyone in the screen. So not only the speaker, but everyone. Let's turn on the video just for a second, then you can go all anonymous again. Hopefully not. Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Oh.
Okay.
Russell Brand.
So, hello. Okay. All right. So you're gonna give me if it's your first Foresight Salon, then give me a thumbs up right now. First Foresight Salon, give me a thumbs up. All right, we have a few newcomers. That's amazing. Very, very glad. Okay, then if you are located in North America, give me a wave. Wave if you're in North America. Okay, that's a few. If you're located in Europe, wave. No one's in Europe. Oh, we have a few waves. We have 3 waves over here. If you are in located in Africa, give me a wave. No one here from Africa. That's good. If we're here from Australia, give me a wave. If you're here from Oceania, that was because we had a few folks from New Zealand here on. Give me a wave. Yeah. Give me a wave. Okay, alrighty. All right, so at least we have a little bit of continental diversity here. That's nice. In one of the salons, we actually managed to get one person from each continent, which was amazing. And then, how are you feeling? I go from 1 to 5, and if you're feeling one being quite negative, if you're feeling 1, then like so quite negative, wave now. If you're feeling 2, so like kind of poorly, then wave now. Yeah, okay, we have 1. If you're feeling like mediocre, kind of like in the middle there, like hanging in, like quite neutral, then wave now. Okay, we have a few wavers, a few takers. Okay, well, now we're moving up. If you're feeling quite positive, like not bad, like actually quite good, then wave now. Okay. And if you're feeling absolutely amazing, then wave now. Okay, no one is in total optimistic.
Nobody.
Maybe we can change that with the salon, right? Let's see what we can do today.
Oh, good segue.
Let's maybe do it. Yeah, let's at the end of it, maybe we can do another wave. Okay, great. Thank you all for joining. This is really nice to see so many smiley faces from across the globe so early in the morning for me and in the afternoon for many of you. Maybe a few words about the Foresight Sanity Preserver. I will kind of like keep it very brief because we have a lot of people that have been here before. So I will now share with you a few links that you could copy paste if you're interested in doing this again. We now have the schedule online on our website rather than just being this crazy Google Doc where many of you have been following it. So the first link is the schedule on foresight.org, Sanity Schedule. I strongly beg you, I beg you to please share that link with everyone who you think could benefit from those salons across the globe. I think the more people we have, the better. Please especially share it with people who have COVID-19 and related projects who would benefit from exposure, because there's an application sheet where you can apply to do one of those salons. So if you know of a project that is in dire need of funds or that is in dire need of volunteers, hit me up directly, or please share that link with people so that they can apply to do a salon. And then at the salons to your Google Calendar, there's a link for that. And also new, there's now a link to the YouTube channel by which we daily upload the videos. So in case you missed out on one, they will be there. With that being said, yesterday evening we had a fantastic salon of one of our Foresight fellows, Patrick, and he came down with COVID-19 a few weeks ago, and he kind of like got himself out of it, and then got a few of his housemates and someone over 70 with who had a high risk profile out of it. And he talked a little bit about how he did that, and how we can kind of make that treatment available for more people. I strongly encourage you to watch that salon. It will be online later today. It was really quite fantastic. It's quite experimental too, but he goes through kind of like the different mechanisms. All right, that's just as a teaser for you to watch the YouTube channel. But I am so stoked to have Tyler here today, and I think this one was really a long one coming. I remember when I met Tyler in the Bay Area. I think it was a few weeks in my first appearance in the Bay Area, and it was the Effective Altruism Global Summit, and Tyler was doing interviews with people that he thought were interesting, and so I landed on like in front of you, and in my very first weeks, and I was like, who is this person? And of course I googled him before and seen all of the crazy TED talks that TEDx talks that you've done with your crazy tulip suits, and I was like, oh my God. And I was so nervous. I remember I was just all night fretting about what would I say to him? What's he gonna ask me? And then I sat in front of you, and I think since then I could not imagine a life without you. You've been really touching my life in the most amazing ways, personal and professional, and it's a total joy, I think, to be around you. Yeah. So I'm hoping that you'll grace us and other people online with your presence today. I'm super excited for what you have in store, and for gamifying this whole Zoom experience a little bit. Tyler's bio, I'm going to post it here. It's really quite extensive, and I think it's fair to say that you really kickstarted a lot of what people cherish about the EA community, and especially the let's say the kind of search for meaning within the EA community that we have right now, and I think it's always a pleasure to see your crazy sparks of insights on Facebook. So I encourage people to connect him there if you're down for really long, really good posts. All right. Well, without much further ado, I want to give the stage to Tyler, and in case you will just see a photo of me. That's not because you bore me, but it's because my internet connection is unstable, and I want to save bandwidth to preserve the salon and to preserve the experience that you create. So yeah, the stage is yours. I'll post your bio, and please introduce the little experiment that you have for us.
Sure. So I'm a little bit shy now, both thanks to Allison's speech, but also because my internet connection is also kind of shoddy. So I hope you'll pardon any sort of lags or delays or skips or vocal warps or things like that. So to give some background for today, there was a time in, I think it was 2014, when I myself first arrived in the Bay Area, and I started getting really excited about the effective altruism movement. And for those who don't know what that is, essentially it's a group of people around the world, probably around maybe like 10,000, 20,000, something like that, who are trying to think about how can we use essentially scientific thinking to figure out which, out of all the positive things you can do in the world, where are the greatest opportunities. So it's almost like they're taking kind of like a venture capitalist mindset to figuring out like what are the big bets that you could make that could result in the greatest amount of lives saved or improved. To give an example of the sort of thing that they pay attention to, there's this one example where for the cost, for example, of one seeing eye dog and training that one seeing eye dog, you could cure over 1,000 people of blindness in sub-Saharan Africa by doing a simple surgery on their scotomas, which cause their eyes to get kind of crusty. That was sort of one of the introductory examples that a lot of people in the movement got really excited about. And then it turned out that there were just these opportunities all over the world for the same amount, where for the same amount of money, you can make a much greater impact on some cause. And then possibly you could even shift to a different cause that might make an even greater impact. Now, there are all these, of course, philosophical questions about what is impact, what is actually doing good, what is helping. And that's also something that the movement spends a lot of time debating, like a lot of time, Allison, as you're probably familiar with by now. But anyway, that's just some background to introduce my story, where in 2014, I got really excited about the effective altruism movement, and specifically its focus on the long term. And in particular, its focus on preventing global disasters that could disrupt the long term. The idea being that the majority of humans who will ever exist don't exist yet. It's the trillions and trillions and trillions and quintillions of humans who will have lives in the future. And thus, if you want to think about a population that essentially has no voice to stand up for itself, and a population for which we want, for which we have enormous power to do good for, especially right now at this precipice in history where you have exponentially increasing technological development, or I guess it's slowed down from exponential, but it's still quite fast. Then a population you might want to focus on is this long-term future crowd, and in particular, preventing the sorts of global catastrophes that could cause humanity to either return to the dark ages or to just not exist at all. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the concept of existential risk. These are things like artificial intelligence risk, where the idea is you could have something much, much smarter than a human that might not have aligned goals, and thus might see humanity basically just as an obstacle to accomplishing its goals. This is one that Elon Musk now pays a lot of attention to. There's also synthetic biology pandemic risk, which is something that EAs have been paying a lot of attention to for a while. And then they've also been paying attention to global catastrophic risks, which are things like the current pandemic, which is affecting all of humanity and can threaten to disrupt global supply chains and so on. So I started caring a lot about these things, and I wanted to find other people to care about them too. And my idea was that I would assemble this epic dinner. Actually, Alice, it was at the embassy before I think you were at the embassy. I would assemble this epic dinner at this place called the Embassy, which is this amazing group house in San Francisco that has this incredible dining room. It just like looks like the place where you would gather a bunch of the people who all wanted to save the world. Like, it's the perfect setting. It's got all this like Edwardian architecture. It's really beautiful. And like nice wine glasses and things like that. So I can invite fancy people to it. So I basically made a map of all the like high impact philanthropists across all the Bay Area, people interested in effectiveness and who were fairly cause neutral in what they funded. And then basically I just cold called a bunch of them, saying that I was hosting a dinner, and was able to get something like 90% of them to show up. Now it was partly on the basis of already knowing a few of them, but it was kind of wild to me that they would even show up to this dinner to begin with. But they were all there, and then I had a few of my philanthropist friends who were already involved in long-termism and in global catastrophic risks start introducing themselves and sort of setting the tone of the night. And we all sort of went around seeing if we could interest any of these high impact philanthropists in long-termism and global catastrophic risk prevention. Now, to my dismay, as happens at parties like this, they were very politely interested. It seemed like to them, a nice thing for someone in the world to be paying attention to. But it ultimately turned out that very few of them were, you might say, converted to the idea that maybe this is one of the most impactful causes you could pay attention to, because of all the future lives it can affect and the extent of global harm that it could cause. A lot of them already had their own particular set of local cause areas that they cared about, which were important, but they didn't seem to be very interested in the long term. For me, there's something really crazy that's happening right now, which is, for the first time in 7 years since I started caring about this stuff, it seems like I'm finally kind of like living in the same world as everyone else. It's really weird for me because, for people like me and in the global catastrophic risk and existential risk movement, we've been living in a world where we're almost like traumatized by things that haven't happened yet. There's always just this like black cloud on the horizon of this looming catastrophic disaster, which has yet to occur, but which we are all like picturing very viscerally. Like we're hearing the ring of sirens going by before that's even happening in New York. And now that world has actually actualized, which is deeply tragic on one hand. And on the other hand is kind of leading, at least, I don't know if you guys have encountered this, but at least for me, leading to this unprecedented moment where all of civilization is focusing on what in my mind is one of the biggest problems. It's this reprioritization of essentially all societies across the board, because it's affecting everyone from, janitors to mailmen to doctors to venture capitalists. Basically, there isn't anyone in the world who isn't directly affected by this. Even some of the most wealthy and powerful are affected because they're having to often move out of cities and go to bunkers and islands and things like that. And with that sort of global reallocation of attention and priority, there comes this amazing potential, as I'm sure a lot of you are seeing, for mass collaboration and mass mindset shift as well. So, I personally am interested in seeing how, for instance, there's a lot of historical speculation that the Renaissance was enabled by the Black Death, that previous to the Black Death, people were very used to being able to depend on the systems that were maintaining society and on secular and religious authorities. And then the Black Death swept the entire world. And then out of that comes a global, or maybe not a global, but at least in some places, a massive local mindset shift, and you get things like the Italian Renaissance. And then later on, you have the 30 Years' War, one of the most destructive conflicts that the world had ever seen to that point. I think something like 8 million deaths, and there's just this endless battle, series of battles. And out of that, you get something like the Enlightenment. And so when I'm looking at the world right now, there's a part of me that feels kind of like desperate and hopeless because a lot of my friends are getting affected by it. I know people who have coronavirus. My own mother has an immune disorder, and so it's obviously very concerning for me and tragic. And at the same time, I see this massive opportunity for a culture-wide shift, and I don't know what that is. And so when I think about a group that has some sort of specialization at imagining optimistic futures, my intuition automatically goes to these foresight salons and Allison's scene that she's created, because this is essentially the foresight specialty, is in gathering groups of people together who are looking at the future and aren't like, fuck it, let it burn, which is an understandable response. But people who instead have already like the hope and the self-efficacy to not let it burn, to step in and intervene and not just let things return to normal, but actually cause things, set the future on a course to flourishing. So I think that's the current opportunity. And now I'd sort of, before breaking us into small groups, I'd like to lead us on something like a meditation visualization to get us started. And so let's all close our eyes. And imagine that it's 100 years from now, and the historians of the future are speculating that it was thanks to this new plague, the coronavirus, that a new renaissance emerged in human history. That finally a bunch of the old ways that didn't work started to dissolve, and there was massive mindset shift causing cultural flourishing across the board. New developments in technology, new developments in art, new developments in the way people socialized, in mannerisms, even new developments in the way people gathered and what kinds of music that they liked, etc. So my visualization for you is, what is it like to be living in that time? So imagine that time is maybe, let's say, 3 or 4 years from now. So what does it look like to be surrounded by that? What sorts of interactions are now possible to have with people that weren't possible before? How is the tone of those interactions different? And maybe, how does your body feel in those interactions? And now when you start thinking about the things that people value, where they valued some things now, and some of those things went away and gave rise to new things that people value, in terms of the technology that gets funded, in terms of the things that people spend their free time on, the types of careers that people think are important, the types of cultural gatherings that people like to go to, what art shows are like, what people bond over on dating applications, dating apps, what people look for in a significant partner and in a friend, and how that might have changed slightly differently. Maybe how families feel different, what it's like to interact with families, and maybe different ideas about even raising families. Okay, so I'll give that, let's give that another minute, and I'll let you sort of freeform brainstorm on your own. And as part of that, see if you can imagine yourself also as an active participant, not as just someone who has a God's eye view on this new culture, which is a cool thing to do. You can do that too, but also someone who's in the action, actually participating in it. So you might think about also how your life and your priorities might be different in this new culture, and what this new culture actually enables you to do, maybe what you've wanted to do for a long time, but which the old culture didn't take seriously enough or didn't value. For instance, in my case, not a lot of people know this about me, but I write a lot of poetry that's informed by, for instance, my experience that I mentioned before, the sort of almost like being traumatized by events that haven't happened yet. It's a style of poetry that tries to integrate not only things that feel kind of like romantic and flowery, but also the gritty reality that we live in, and the fact that all of that is real. And my experience with showing people this poetry is they typically either fell into two camps. Either it felt kind of too overwhelming for them, or in cases like Allison, I think there was great appreciation for it. So when I imagine my own experience in this new culture, some optimism for me is for instance finally being able to share my poetry and sort of have it be seen, and that's a nice thought. So think for yourself, what is your equivalent of something like that? Okay, so let's now wrap that up and do a second visualization. So now that you have this idea in mind of what the world could look like and what culture could look like, try something kind of concrete, which is ask yourself, how did we get there? imagine it's 4 years in the future. You're looking back at how this all happened, and you're trying to make sense of the events that led to this amazing culture that you now live in. So what, new companies were founded, what sorts of public-private partnerships were created, what sorts of things happened in your friend group to cause them to shift mindset. What were the series of events that happened that you saw news reports on? And so that will be our prompt for launching us into small groups of about 3 or 4. I'll leave it up to Allison. And in these small groups, let's take this as a prompt. So let's share our imaginations of what this improved culture might look like, the culture to come out of the new Renaissance, to come out of the new plague. And then after that, let's trade ideas on how we got there, and try to make them concrete to the point where you can imagine yourself influencing those events. So concrete to the point of like, the Gates Foundation does this, and I connect someone to the Gates Foundation, or there's this new stimulus package, and these are the effects that it has that we didn't even anticipate. So things at multiple levels of abstraction, I think, are the way to go. So Allison, I don't know, I've seen it done before that the organizer pops people into breakout groups. Can we go ahead and try that out? Are you shaking your finger?
Magic! Clink, clink. We can definitely try.
Oh, I see. It's like this, not like that.
We will do that. And one thing I think that could be fun, Tyler, is if I assign you to one group first, and then I'm gonna kind of like move you through the groups, every few minutes or so you can like listen in if other groups feel comfortable with that. If you're down for that. That could be kind of fun. You could like reiterate on the prompts and stuff. So I will be moving you through. So you'll be going through a little bit of a chat roulette. All right. So
I kind of prefer to be a fly on the wall if that's possible. But I like the idea. I more want to hear from other people. Yeah. It's more in case people have questions or something. That would be fun. All right. So we currently have 3 to 4 participants per room. Do you want less? We can also have 2 to 3. Is 2 to 3 better?
What's the other option?
2 to 3. Tyler, do you want
I think you have more experience in organizing breakout groups like this, so I'll leave it up to you.
I think.
All right.
Yeah, doesn't matter. 3.
Okay, let's do 2 to 3, I think, and then let's give it about 20 minutes. And then you will now be broken out into, you'll receive an invitation. You can follow that invitation. You then have 2 or 3 people in there with whom you can do the breakout groups. And then I'll be trying to move Tyler around into your group, and maybe he will circle in case you have a question, but just go along with the prompts that he gave, kind of like try to visually describe that world. And then I will, there will be a little, there will be a little icon that will pop up at the end of it that will tell you that you now have to come back to the main room, and then it will drop you into this room again. And then we do some report outs in the last 10 minutes. So for the next 20 minutes at least, you'll be in those groups, and maybe I'll be broadcasting messages to you all in case anything changes. All right, have a fun time. And
Thanks,
I'm
Allison.
opening all rooms. You should now have an invitation, and you can follow that room. And I see many people are following already. And I'm moving a few folks around if there's only one other. Tyler, go to your room. I moved you. And I'm resuming recording. Let's see.
Hey, the
Hello.
poll.
Oh, everyone's back. Yay. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Long time no see. Let's see where Tyler is. Is Tyler back?
He never showed up in our room.
He
I think he was
didn't?
in our room last, so he should have been popped back here.
Yeah. Well, he may have trouble logging in, but I moved him around in Korea and I moved into your room. Maybe he didn't take up the invitation.
Oh, well,
Who
his
knows?
thoughts.
All right. So, well, Krian, could you mute yourself, or can everyone mute themselves? Because otherwise, I
Given
think
chat
this
list anymore. So
all right. Okay. Please mute yourselves, guys. That would be great. Thank you. I don't know why. Or Shigozi, can you unmute yourself for a second? Because currently it seems like the video is stuck on you. Oh, Tyler.
Hello.
Hello. Let's see. Okay, now I have the video back. Great. Okay, cool. Really quickly, do you want to give me all muted, please? Do you want to give me a kind of thumbs up, thumbs middle, or thumbs down? How do you think, like reading the room, how did that go for you guys? 1, 2, 3. Thumbs up. Okay, I see a lot of thumbs up and some thumbs middle and some like that are wavering here in between from Shigozi. She's like, okay, well, that's great. That's pretty good for a morning start. Okay, with that being said, let's do a little report out. Tyler, do you want to take that over? Do you want to share what have you discovered by
Yeah,
like
sure.
being switched from room to room?
Well, so I think just for expediency's sake, since we only have 6 minutes, I'd love to hear just little sound bites. So one, what is one aspect of culture that you think will change, or what do you think will exist? So some detail of the future scene from your group. And then the second is one thing that you think will change the culture in leading up to that. So for me, one thing I really think will happen is you'll see a lot more philanthropic capital going toward civilizational resilience. So I think what that looks like specifically is, for instance, philanthropic capital that's meant to, for instance, spin up meta-activist groups that will organize people on the front lines whenever things like this pop up. So you have like, right now you have a lot of PPE matching services popping up, about 36 different ones started by Silicon Valley engineers, basically all at the same time. But then there wasn't really a sort of meta organization to keep that from becoming chaos at the beginning. So I'd love to see more things like that. And then as for how we get there, one thing that I'm doing right now with a few friends is creating a sort of a fund that will initially take in funds mostly from the existential risk crowd, but eventually hopefully start talking to more traditional philanthropists to see if they want to contribute to that. And I'd love to see similar projects out there for talent and other sorts of resources as well. So why don't we start with Allison? Do you know how to refer to the group? What's the best way to refer to the groups? Just call out individuals. I think you were more aware of who was in what group.
Yes, I have the I have the groups here, and I'll just call out the first group with Colleen, Dan, and Robert. Does anyone of you want to move forward and say like a little 1-minute summary of what was up for you?
I'll do it. I think we talked about a few things. We think there might be a shift towards more open source medical equipment, maybe a sort of change in regulations in sort of pandemics like that. The FDA, I guess, has been a buffer in sort of getting some of these things done. We also think that there will be maybe more of a shift towards people organizing in smaller groups, because we've sort of been insulated and kind of been able to figure out who we want to navigate the world with. Because of disruption in supply chain, we think that maybe there'll be more distributed resources and how people go about that. And then what else do we say? Oh, and then maybe like staying home from work sick will be less taboo. So those are kind of the things that we sort of thought about. And that was a summary of that. And then the question is, how do we get there? Is that what it was?
We had one negative one, which is people are going to be spending, if people are working from home or whatnot, people will be spending more time online, which is going to lead to more polarization and social isolation. So mostly positive, but one negative.
All right, maybe one item of how you got there before we give it up to the next group. And the next group between Brian, Max, and Akshay can already get ready.
Like maybe in terms of like the open source medical equipment, and then shifting from having high regulations in times like these. Again, I think it would have to be policy changes, and then some sort of reconceptualization of profits over people, and just sort of thinking more, I guess. I guess it just has to be a large cultural shift in that terms of.
Yeah, there's one other point, I guess. I know we're almost out of time, but which is maybe people will be more receptive to things like UBI or negative income tax or something to help out the worst off in society, because they probably will be disproportionately affected.
All right, thank you so much, guys. Okay, next one are Brian, Max, or Akshay. Who wants to go? And keep it nice and sweet.
Sure. So I think there are two main ideas. One was around more coordination across, professionals from different fields of expertise, which I'm seeing now here in the Philippines to fight COVID. And another one is countries trying to be more self-sustaining, like trying to have a resource-based economy. So, they wouldn't need to import, or they wouldn't need to, like poorer countries wouldn't need to depend on other countries for food and whatnot. And how to accelerate that, just having more of these coordination sessions to, or chats to learn from different countries or people from different fields of expertise. I think that's enough I can say for a quick soundbite.
Awesome, thank you so much. Next one up, we have Craig Jolly, David Grossoff, and iPhone. Who wants to go?
Yeah, I think I got volunteered to do our readout. We talked a lot about sort of what professions and what groups of people are going to be valued more after this and trusted more after this, and sort of who the heroes are going to be in this near future after this is all done what it's going to do. And I think in terms of how we get there, David especially brought out this point a lot about the stories that we end up telling about this moment in history. That what are the novels about the year of the coronavirus going to be? What are the movies about the year of the coronavirus going to be? And how are those going to shape the way that people understand what happened and shape who they see as who they see as having become more powerful or more trustworthy or more believable as a result of this.
All right, that's a nice kind of like segue from the kickoff salon that we did with Jan Tallinn, where we also talked a lot about kind of like exodus opportunities from COVID-19. And one thing that was mentioned there was we now need really good fiction writers and good historians to kind of weave the narrative. All right, and next one up, We have Clark and Lauren. Who wants to go? 1 minute, go.
So we had some conversations about virtual reality and connecting. Clark is in Manila and I'm here in Oakland, and how in the future that could lead to people being very grounded and connected in the virtual world versus people being very grounded and connected in the physical world. And so the question is, how do you bridge bringing people who are not fluent in virtual technology but very fluent in the physical world into the virtual world and vice versa? So how do you build bridges where the resilience that's learned by being physically present can also come into what people who are living in the virtual world also have? So
Very nice. I love it.
Of it.
So many different flavors. This is awesome. Okay, Laurel, Russell Brand, and Steve Vedder. Who wants to go?
I guess I will. This is Russell. A big part of what we talked about is just breaking people out of pattern of everything having to move very quickly. And when people have more time, does that change things so that they get deeper relationships? Does that so they don't spend large parts of their disposable income on showing off to their neighbors? Or do we have a giant problem of a sort of post-illness from people who have been in isolation, like prisoners in solitary confinement? Do we have a big change in demographic with differential death rates, right? In physics, we say progress is made one death at a time. Does that get rid of a lot of societal inertia and let us make faster changes, whether those are changes for the better or for the worse? And I think
Okay, very nice.
If I could add a couple,
all right.
we talked about how necessity was a mother invention, which is kind of along the lines he was just talking about. One possibility as far as what could happen in the near future to start a move another direction is, of course, in November. We got an election coming that could have a huge effect on the next 4 years, and presumably the time after that. We also talked about the fact that the economy is going to be hurt by this, at least for a while. And while it's nice to think about the idea that maybe this is going to cause people to start having a longer term view, the reality is I don't think it's going to happen. If people are trying to figure out how to keep a roof over their head and feed their families, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is going to kick in. They're not going to have time to think about humanity and self-actualization and these higher level capabilities. So I think a big part of the Renaissance is actually going to be atomically precise manufacturing and AI. And maybe this will stimulate those to happen faster, or the economy will be hurt so bad that it slows them down. It's not clear, but I think that's going to be the real turning point.
All right, that's also good food for thought, pretty actionable with the November item. Okay, next one up with Creon, Helen, and Roland.
Hi, so on a high level, thinking that change happens when the pain of change outweighs the pain of staying the same. And so some things that we talked about is the emergence of redesigning civilization as an emerging field of like people actually thinking about the system that we currently have is not necessarily working for us, and it disproportionately punishes those who don't have as much as those at the top of society. And so we talked about with the pandemic going on, we're hoping, and we had both sides of the coin, will this change not just healthcare, but actually not just the symptom, but can we actually motivate people after the pandemic to live healthier lives, to live closer to the land, to not eat processed foods, to not necessarily live sedentary lives? And we also explored mental health at the state because Roland is in Berlin as a psychologist, and just noticing how are people actually handling their mental health, and is it the first time that we actually have to think about and focus on maintaining not just our physical health, but our emotional and mental health during this time and afterwards. And if I'm leaving anything out, free to jump in.
All right, thank you so much. Great. Then we had, I think, Doni and Rosemary were in a group.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about also living closer to the land and potentially, at least personally, leaving urban areas, and just the impacts that like I'm in Brooklyn, and there's a lot of people, and now everyone is very aware of where all the other human bodies are, and there's a lot more eye contact. And we were just talking about the effects on local communities, but also just that awareness of our connectedness as a species and also to the earth. We also spoke about digital impacts and how it seems like everyone is flocking online, and how there could be a potential change in the landscape of the internet, which is still quite young, and really connecting people over topics and kind of ways of thinking versus who owns what page or who knows who in real life and therefore online.
Very nice. Wow. Also so funny that you're in Brooklyn. You definitely look like you're on the countryside.
I know.
That's really nice.
No, I'm in Brooklyn.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Okay,
yes.
well, looks lovely, very natural there. And last group that we have to report out is the group from Miron, Anna, and Shigozi. Who wants to go? And then maybe Tyler can do a little wrap up, and then we bounce.
Hi, I don't know if anyone else wanted to go, but I guess I can do a little summary. So we started off talking about, as some other people had, whether it might result in people leaving cities, and there was a little talk about how that actually occurred after the Black Death. Anna said that immediately afterwards that London had a lot of properties which were not occupied, and that was before any reduction in population. So we talked about that, and also whether there might be ways to continue urbanization despite people feeling like proximity to people is difficult, remembering this situation. Then we went on to talk about, again referencing the Renaissance, how a lot of the cultural shift was perhaps due to people being in close proximity, coffee shops, a lot of people being in Florence, a lot of artists and things, and how it's maybe difficult to replicate that online because there's a strong element of chance in meetings like that, and having physical proximity is somewhat different to making an intentional meeting online, which is what a lot of online meetings are. And so we were thinking about ways that either virtual reality or more generally online meetings might have that. We talked about game lobbies and things where people do get randomly paired up, and in fact this meeting itself, the Zoom meeting where we were randomly paired off to talk to each other, it's kind of difficult in terms of experiences that you get in game lobbies often is that there's no overarching goal, and you need some kind of specific thing that you're talking about to make conversation happen in a way that's productive, rather than just having a bunch of 10-year-olds playing, trying to frustrate you. Instead, you need actual topic.
Well, it's, I think, a very, very, thank you. Yeah, that's a very nice segue, I think, into closing this out, unless you had a final point to add.
I have a final point to add. So I was doing some research into how the Black Death spread, and it initially came from Hubei province. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it spread from Hubei province in China through to the Middle East, to Europe, and then beyond. How's that for history?
Wow.
All right. Thank you. Okay, with that being said, Tyler, do you want to maybe do like a little closing out, and then I will just share a few links for you guys to stay up to date on the sanity preservers. But that's all for me. I'll give you the last word. And I personally had a fantastic time. I love the report outs. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for hosting this, Tyler.
And thank you. Yeah, I mean, something that occurred to me while going through the groups was just the fact that most people in this chat right now are already ahead of the curve, probably amongst many of their friends. And so I think with that actually comes an interesting position. Like, we're in this uncertain time, and people are turning to the people who seem to have more thoughts about what's going to happen and what's happening now. And so I think basically that leads us to be the people who are in the position of enacting that potential renaissance. So one thing I'd love for people to take away is just to ask themselves, like, how can I be not only an active participant, but in fact a beacon of what can be created, since we're going to have so many people around us looking to us for what do we think is important, what are we doing, and so on.
I love it. Very nice, very hopeful, very proactive. And maybe, we can do a follow-up or something of this in a few weeks and see how it progressed, and, if there's any specific action items, and do some scenario planning. Yeah.
One other thing is, in case people want to practice being a beacon immediately after this, my family and I host a daily dance party in a Zoom room. So if anyone wants to join that, the audio is probably going to be a little bit shaky, but I posted the link in the chat.
Oh my God, this is amazing. Also, Tyler, any links that you can share, I will post also on the schedule. And oh man, okay, we already have someone who wants to continue the conversation. Yay, Rosemary. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Tyler. This was fantastic. What a hopeful start into the day, right? Okay, I can't wait to see many of you this evening. We have Lydia Lawrenson from the New Modality, who share brand new kind of like first ones up that they're going to publish soon in their new newspaper. She just did an interview with Tyler Cohen, and where he did some COVID-19 predictions as well, and she'll share a little bit about that. So I hope to see many of you later tonight. Alrighty, bye everyone. Bye.
Bye everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye.